There's something. iPad Jazz, but I don't want to be on that.
Yeah, you're good.
I don't want to see myself.
Oh, I know, but I think it'll.
Because I already said in that new video.
We you, Janice.
Who's that?
That was Amy in Cottage Grove.
Oh, hi. I can't see anything yet. Can you see?
I can see you, but I don't have a camera. Ha ha.
You can still. Oh, here we go.
Hi, Lon.
Hello.
Who's that? Cottage Grove? Amy or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amy?
They came down here with
Okay.
Lama.
There's Durbin, Vicky.
She came down with Lama when she came down there last after the Drupchen.
Switch to active speaker. That's what we want. Gallery view. How do we get rid of S? Somewhere or another.
Oh, right there.
Up
Hit
here,
the video.
participant.
Hit the video.
Oh, stop video.
So here we are.
I just now found out that my son, my daughter-in-law, had the baby just 2 minutes ago. So they have a little girl. So we're all excited about that. That makes 14 grandchildren all together. So I'm doing my part to and for those of you who have been also checking and things about Riggs and Ling, also Riggs and Ling is now, there's 3 fires around Riggs and Ling right now. One, the most serious one immediately, is only about 10 or so miles away. And then there's a very small one now that just started. And then there's a very big one also. I don't know how far away it is, but it's in the area. It's also in the area. So please pray to Guru Rinpoche and all those who have influence over the elements to allow that fire to die away. So if we bring up the prayers before teaching, you have
You should tell everybody that you just had a
I
grandson.
did.
You told them?
I pay homage with my body, speech, and mind, filled with devotion to all Buddhas without exception, those lion-like heroes of the past, present, and future, who dwell in all worlds throughout the universe. With the power of these aspirations for excellent conduct, I bow before all victorious ones as they manifest to my mind, prostrating with as many bodies as there are atoms in the universe, each surrounded by hosts of bodhisattvas. Wait a minute, I envision that there are countless Buddhas abiding on every atom in the universe, each surrounded by hosts of bodhisattvas, completely pervading the basic space of phenomena. With never-ending praises sung to an ocean of melodies, I extol the perfect qualities of all victorious ones who have arrived at a state of bliss. I offer to all these victorious ones sublime flowers, garlands, music, and balms, beautiful parasols, brilliant lamps, the purest incense, the finest clothes and loveliest fragrances, vessels filled with sweet-scented powders piled as high as the king of mountains, the finest, most exalted array of all excellent things. I offer these as well to all the Buddhas. With the power of my faith in excellent conduct and my devotion to the Buddhas, I pay homage and present them with vast, unsurpassable offerings. I confess each and every negative action of my body, speech, and mind that I have committed under the influence of desire, anger, and ignorance. I rejoice in the meritorious deeds of Buddhas throughout all directions, as well as bodhisattvas, pratyeka Buddhas, arhats beyond training, those still in training, and all beings. I request that those lamps of the world, the protectors who, free of attachment, have attained the enlightened state of Buddhahood, turn the wheel of the unsurpassable Dharma. I join my hands and beseech those who may wish to pass beyond all suffering, to remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the universe, in order to bring benefit and happiness to all beings. I dedicate whatever virtue I have accumulated through prostrating, offering, and confessing, through rejoicing, requesting, and supplicating, however slight this virtue may be, to the enlightenment of all. The earth is perfumed with scented water, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, and the sun and moon. By imagining and offering this as a Buddha realm, may all beings come to enjoy the pure realms. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniryatayami. To fulfill the needs of all beings at their various levels of understanding, we request that you turn the wheel of Dharma, including the lesser and greater, common and extraordinary approaches.
Baby.
So then, please, not please you, but we should now check our motivation for being here, listening to the teachings, and arouse this intention to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, and to engage in the practices of the conduct of a bodhisattva, in particular the 6 paramitas, in order to bring that about. So we are right now in the 5th chapter of Shantideva's text of the Way of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharyāvatāra. And just to review the context, in the first 3 chapters, we learned how to clarify, to purify our mind and gather the wholesome qualities that would allow bodhicitta to take birth in our mind, as well as the in the 3rd chapter, the actual taking of those vows. And then in the 4th, 5th, and 6th chapters, Shantideva is teaching how to prevent those, prevent bodhicitta, both the aspiration bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta, and all the trainings that go along with those vows, how not to allow all of that to degenerate, to be lost, as it will for beginners like ourselves. And so, of course, even, Shantideva, the premise that Shantideva was basing these 3 chapters on was that just giving rise to bodhicitta, just having this intention and making these commitments doesn't ensure that they will be accomplished, that we will attain enlightenment just because we give rise to these 2 kinds of bodhicitta once, or even once a day, or every once in a while we give rise to bodhicitta, but that this intention will become, will decline or become scattered or forgotten or corrupted. It's assumed that will occur. And so we should, as we proceed in our spiritual life, then we should assume also that is what will happen. And by studying and reflecting on and carrying out the different meditations that Shantideva is presenting, then that bodhicitta will not decline. As I think I mentioned earlier, there's 4 ways that our bodhicitta will decline, or what would be called, there are 4 downfalls in maintaining the precepts of the Bodhisattva path. And one is not knowing the training, not knowing how to correct, or not knowing how to practice what will prevent downfalls. And the other one, the second, what are called doors of downfalls, is to be heedless. Of course, heedlessness, being heedless, is what's covered in the 4th chapter that we finished. And then the 3rd door of downfalls is that presently we have more kleshas than we do qualities, like say, or that our bodhicitta is far outweighed by our kleshas. So we should accept that and let that kind of make us more, how do I say, accepting, and to also, especially as we read this, as we study this 5th chapter, mindfulness or introspection, to really take it personally, take it as personal instructions for someone like us. It's not just learning the doctrine, the Buddha's doctrine, like the Mahayana doctrine. That's not the point. The point is to apply as we can these instructions so that our kleshas will become fewer and fewer. The fewer kleshas, the more wisdom. That's the formula that we're working with. And then the fourth, what are called the fourth door of downfalls, is knowing the training, but not really respecting or not relating to it in the way that would allow it to work. Not really kind of discounting the training. So we should know, kind of be on the lookout or be on guard for these four gates, and make up for them with studying and being careful and heedful and noticing the profusion of kleshas, as is outlined in the previous verses when we went over those, and then practicing to the best of our ability so that we feel as though the practice actually landed on our mind, and that we can feel at least some traction from the application of the teachings. Then our enthusiasm and respect and devotion to the practice will pick up. But again, like we mentioned many times earlier on in the third chapter, the Bodhisattva path has to be seen or has to be practiced in a very gradual way, small steps, a very gradual way. That's how it will actually begin to land on our mind more and more, not just some sort of sudden I call it sudden life. No, suddenly it's changing our lifestyle or something. That's not how we should relate to this. Not how we should practice. We should practice in small increments. Okay, so then in this, the vigilant introspection, the introspection chapter, these are just as in the earlier chapter, it was the paramita of generosity in the first and second, the second and third chapters. And then in this chapter, the heedfulness or carefulness and vigilant introspection is how to practice the paramita of discipline. And so we've, as you know, if you looked into the way that the paramitas are generally taught in sort of a threefold manner, then in the paramita of, for instance, generosity, there's the generosity material, the giving of material goods, the giving of protection, and the giving of dharma, sort of in the order of capacity. First, our capacity is to give material things to others. And then secondly, as we develop more qualities of not clinging, then we're able to offer protection to others. And because of the trust that others may feel. And then at a certain point, then one can offer the Dharma. And here in discipline, then there's the first discipline of the Bodhisattva is the discipline of abandoning negative actions, which is what Shantideva has been discussing up to this point. All the teachings up to this point are about, first the chapter began by giving us a reflection on how all harm comes from our own mind, and then how all virtue comes from our own mind, and that the basis of all bodhisattva activity is the mind, not speech and body so much, but mind, and how we need to keep watch over our mind. And as far as noticing our mind, see if we begin by reflecting on how all outer harm comes from our mind, how negativity is our mind, how virtue comes from our mind. All these reflections that are taught at the outset of this chapter are all sort of it's how we begin to notice our mind, and notice the power of our mind. And then the itemization of all of the afflictions kind of fine tunes more of how we see and relate to our mind. We want to see our afflictions. We want to see our faults. This is the Bodhisattva path. And then he also then discussed how we should be aware of the drawbacks of having a lack of introspection. So it's this mindfulness and introspection are tools that allow us to notice our mind just as it is. We can become very fixated on attaining enlightenment and relate to ourselves as ones who are on the Bodhisattva path, but we won't really accomplish much if we don't then begin the training of the Bodhisattva, which, as it turns out, is to notice our mind and its afflictions. If we don't, speaking in terms of a gradual progress on our spiritual path, if we don't take things like in this order, then all of our efforts at practicing virtue and all the qualities of compassion and wisdom that we aspire to they'll just be like kind of water spilled. They won't go in. Water spilled on a piece of glass. We need to do the underlying work of noticing and relating to our afflictions in a positive way. What do you say? Working with negativity in a positive way. And that is by applying this mindfulness and introspection, and then applying it according to Shantideva's advice here. So now, let's see, we've gotten up to page the 59th verse. And the last verse in 58, again, is the same theme of being always aware of and reflecting on this precious human life we have. And in the previous chapter, when you review the previous chapter, there's many verses about the precious human birth and how it's the perfect vehicle for the path, for the Dharma path. And so again, on verse 58, he advises again on that. And then on 59 begins the section on the discipline of gathering virtue, how to gather virtue.
59.
And so just to give you, again, a little bit of context for this section, this is, let's see, verse 59 to 69, I think. 670, that's what we're going to discuss tonight. It's a one section. One of the principal reasons, we could say the basic reason that Bodhisattva conduct is difficult. Virtuous conduct is virtuous conduct. It's doing positive, virtuous actions. Bodhisattva virtuous conduct is doing those actions with this bodhicitta attitude. And putting those two things together is difficult. Of course, virtue by itself is difficult, isn't it? So one of the basic obstacles, or like say difficulties, is attachment to our body. As we learned in the second chapter, like the foundation of self-clinging is our body, our possessions, and our virtue. Attachment to body, attachment to possessions, attachment to virtue. And so again here, this theme is picked up again, or that problem is picked up again. And so on the Bodhisattva practice, using this introspection, this attachment to our body is one of the basic habits. It's a thought, it's a habit, a mental habit that is to be overcome. And it's overcome by applying these meditations on and from verse 59 to 70. Here in the previous verse 58, Shantideva is saying, okay, never forget that you have this precious human birth. And now he's saying basically that there's a problem with that. And the problem is that we're attached to this human body that we have. So it's kind of a it's interesting, the difference between never forgetting and always reflecting and getting more and more meaning out of our human life because of its qualities on the one hand, and then being told that, well, there's a problem with being attached to our bodies, on the other hand. And here he says, so basically, we need our body to practice. Our body is the vehicle to practice. So we should remember we're not taking that away from our body. That is the main point of that reflection on the preciousness of our human body, is that we need that to practice the Dharma, but we don't need to be attached to it. The body, through attachment, our body can become the main thrust of our life. And of course, for I don't know how many people, perhaps, that is for people who are not Dharma people, it is the main thrust of their life. It is the main purpose of life. But here we are trying to make mind become make our body become the servant of our mind, not the other way around. Being overprotective and pampering our bodies are thoughts. This being overprotective and indulging in our body's pleasures or feelings are just thoughts. And so here he's presenting a meditation that challenges those habitual thoughts with what are called remedial thoughts. And if we can, or let's say in proportion to the lessening of our attachment to our body, will be our lack of difficulty in practicing virtue. And virtue won't be so irritating. We get irritated to practice virtue, to be generous and so forth. And so that is rooted in this attachment to our body, attachment to our comfort zone. And so if we engage in these meditations, these are actual meditations, then we won't sort of crumble in the face of trying to practice virtue. That's why these are so important, to go underneath and gradually work on our mind, not just to take on these huge virtuous responsibilities and then not do the work underneath that. Okay, so we should make that clear. Okay, so then he says here, if, O mind, you will not be aggrieved when vultures with their love of flesh are tugging at this body all around, why are you so besotted with it now? So his first point here is to consider and think of what will happen when our mind and body separate. Mind and body will separate in the future. And when mind and body separate, then the body is just basically a piece of meat. Our corpse will not be something that our mind will be interested in or be attached to then. So why should we be so besotted? I think it has to do with being kind of intoxicated or kind of super crazy about our body. We won't be those who will be fighting over eating our bodies. We won't be fighting the worms and bugs because we are still attached to our bodies. Our mind will have to leave our body. Matter of fact, the Tibetan word for body, lu, means something left behind. So our body is by nature something that our mind will leave behind. Why, O mind, do you protect this body, taking it to be your own? You and it are each a separate entity. However can it be of use to you? So this mind here, of course, it means a dualistic mind. We've had many bodies throughout our time in samsara. Every lifetime, every incarnation, or every lifetime our mind has been involved with has had some kind of body. We've had many bodies, and every one of them we've left behind. And it's this dualistic mind that is the source of attachment to our bodies. And this dualistic mind, as soon as we entered into the womb, our dualistic mind began thinking of that little mass of things in the womb. It began thinking of it as mine. And so if our mind and our body are two separate, basically what he's saying here is mind and body are two separate entities. They're not the same thing. And so why should we cling to our bodies when we can't take it with us? We have to leave it behind. So this is one meditation. So this is what Shantideva is presenting here are reflections or thought processes that we should be talking to. Basically, you have there's a thought that treasures the body, and then there's the remedial thought that cuts through holding the body, holding the body as being precious. And so it's sort of this remedial thoughts versus our clinging habit thoughts, kind of verses. So your mind is talking on the one hand that it treasures the body, and so what the meditation is to be talking to that mind and trying to present to that mind that treasures the body how illogical it is to continue. So you're kind of antidoting this habit of holding the mind as being dear through awareness, through your prajna, through wisdom, through the ability of your mind to be reasonable and logical. So on the 61st, verse 61, he's answering the question that not the question, the statement that mind will make is, well, mind thinks it needs a support. It needs a support. And then if you think you need a home, this mind needs a home, then why, he says, why, O foolish mind, don't you appropriate a clean form carved in wood? How is it fit to guard an unclean engine for the making of impurity? And so, so here, this one is it's interesting. This one is very interesting to me because it kind of here he's saying basically if you really need a support, why are you picking on something that is so troublesome? Why are you picking on something that's so unclean as a body? It's constantly in a state of kind of decay. You eat and you extract the nutrients from it, and then the rest of it fills up your body, and it's things that are impure and kind of causes disease that you have to eliminate. Why don't you have something that's sort of like fresh and say that this is my body? And then there's some reference here to this one sutra, Mahayana Sutra, of how the body is the body has these 80,000 different kinds of bacteria in them, and they break down the pure essence, and the body receives that nutrition, and then these bacteria create waste products, basically. And then those waste products have to be sent out through your anus. And some waste products come out of your nose, some from your eyes, some from your ears, some from your mouth. We have these nine holes. And so basically he's saying here, why don't you appropriate a clean form carved in wood? Reminded me of Pinocchio. Why not? Because that doesn't have this kind of a impure process. We have this idea that there's something about our body that's sort of inherently, or that deep down inside our body is kind of pure and wholesome. And so he's starting to make a case against that, and how illogical that is. And it also, now I'm kind of interjecting my own kind of, when I was thinking of this, about how, why, he said here, a clean form carved in wood. Also, why, anyway, it got me thinking about robots and how, why don't we why doesn't consciousness, or how could consciousness become attached to robots? They're not, they're very kind of clean in a way compared to a human body. And anyway, I won't go on about that. Now that's me and my unwisdom mind, kind of contemplating the future of Dharma and the future of humans, because its consciousness is separate from the body that it inhabits, and its mind that awakens. And then there are certain faculties and conditions, coincidental conditions, that allow that mind to basically practice mindfulness and introspection. Anyway, you can think about that if you want to. I don't know. That's extra. What do you call it? That's extra. But I mean, it's not. If somebody was going to write this now, I wonder if that's not what. Why wouldn't they say something like that? That's what I was thinking at the time. Then the next one, 62, he's presenting a meditation that basically is sort of a mental autopsy on whether or not this feeling we have of this sort of wholesome purity that lurks or that is at the core of our incarnation, of our core of our body, is actually true or not, if there's any basis for it. And so he says, first, with mind's imagination, which is prajna, shed the covering of skin. So peel away with your mind, with this knife of your mind, this skin, your skin, and then look and see if there's anything there that lives up to the purity that we think of when we think of our body as a possession of our mind. And then with the blade of wisdom, further then, strip away the flesh from off the frame and look. I said, look and smell and examine and see what these parts actually are. Kind of mentally kind of spread them out. Maybe spread them out on your kitchen table or something as a meditation, and really take a look at them. Examine each and every detail. When you have, then next one, when you have divided all the bones and searched right down amid the very marrow, so all the muscles and the ligaments and all the details, then ask the question, where is its essential core? Where is it that you get to where you can say, okay, this is the core of body? And see whether or not there's any essence there that is desirable or that it is something to be attached to. Really look to see if there's something to cling to that provides a basis for this tendency we have and habit we have to cling to the body. If persisting in the search, in other words, if with our mind, our dualistic mind, we should carry out this this meditation, this search for many days. After doing this for some time, for some days, then when you see that there is no underlying or desirable essence, then ask your mind, why do you protect with such attachment, with such desire, the body that you now possess? The point here being that the body's only purpose is to practice the Dharma, to practice virtue, to practice bodhicitta. That's the only purpose for it. There is nothing about the body that gives it any sort of meaning or value beyond as a vehicle to awaken bodhicitta, to practice bodhicitta, and to perfect bodhicitta and virtue and benefit beings. It's a vehicle used to reach liberation, enlightenment. So that is what you should come to that when you do that meditation and come to the end point where you find nothing there to cling to, then counsel yourself to thinking in terms of what meaning this body has. Then we're talking about a precious human body. You can see then the difference between just having a human body and being attached to it and having a precious human body. A precious human body doesn't imply that you have this inordinate attachment to it. Then in the commentary, it mentions how like people who have not taken the Bodhisattva or Bodhicitta vow, people who aren't practicing bodhicitta and are not, who don't really have any precepts to guard. So what we're talking, the context there is how do we prevent our bodhicitta and the training in bodhicitta from degenerating? That's what the point of this, that's the context. So if you're not training in bodhicitta, then you have no precepts. So there's no reason for you to overcome your attachment to your body. And there's no reason to be taught these, because there's no context for it. It's weird. The context, without the context, it doesn't make any sense. It's unnecessary even, it's irrelevant. There's this category of teachings in Dharma called irrelevant teachings. And irrelevant teachings has to do with context. So here we should really appreciate the relevancy of this by placing it within the context of bodhicitta. We must know the reason that we're practicing this. This is not, say, the Buddhist Dharma that we should memorize so that we know the Dharma, the doctrine of the Buddha. Okay, there's a context for this.
Infatuation.
So then mind, our habit mind, is persistent, and it still says, well, even though the body is kind of dirty and impure, I still need a body. And then you should tell your mind, the habit clinging to your body mind, then your prajna mind, your wisdom mind should tell that habit clinging body mind. I should have drawn a chart here, so you should ask that mind that treasures the body, well, you can't eat it, O mind. It says, it's filth you cannot eat, O mind. Its blood likewise is not for you to drink. Its innards too are unsuitable to suck. Then you don't need it. You just think you need it, mind. It says, this body, then what will you make of it? It has no use to you, mind. Its only use is to practice virtue. You can't eat it, you can't drink it, you can't do any of the things. Okay, so that's that. Then you answer that. So here you're basically replacing delusion with prajna, with knowledge. And then Shantideva goes on to speak in kind of a very ironic, almost contemptuous way. And he says here, and yet it may indeed be kept as food to feed the vultures and the fox. So he says, well, from the point of view from another point of view, yeah, this body is valuable. You could offer it to the wild animals. Then there'd be some benefit. The value of this human form lies only in the use you make of it. And we're talking about the difference between having a human body and having a precious human body. A precious human body is one where we have uprooted attachment. And again, it's a very gradual process. It's not like throwing the attachment switch off. We need to practice. And this kind of contemplation is a way to actually reduce our attachment to it, while at the same time, we won't necessarily notice that our attachment to our body is reduced. All we'll notice is that we don't have so many problems practicing virtue, practicing Dharma. Because you examine your own self, your life, and see if you can identify how much your body and your concern with your body prevents you from practicing. So we must, it says here, we have such a strong attachment to our body. As a matter of fact, our attachment to our body, we hardly even know we have an attachment to our body. We're so blinded or so attached that we don't even know we're attached to it. So this is what we need to start examining. So and we must do it sort of in a gradual way. It's kind of an unwinding. It's kind of an unwinding process, like Chapter Rinpoche talked about how it's like we're bound up with coils of ropes with knots and we can't move. And then we just have to make our fingers move and just just untie one knot first. And then we can untie another one. And then, one after the other. We have all these knots. It doesn't happen just by like Superman or, it happens like one knot at a time like that. That is the path of the Bodhisattva. See, Bodhisattva path has to be gradual like this so that it becomes authentic, because we are in the world. We are not suddenly becoming a spiritual, a Buddhist practitioner, a Dharma practitioner who shaves their head, gives away all their possessions, and becomes a nun or a monk. Suddenly, a radical lifestyle change. And emphasizing controlling your physical and verbal conduct. We're out there, of course, I don't know everybody here actually, but the Bodhisattva path, like even if we have the outer comportment of a monk or a nun, then our inner life is in the world as a Bodhisattva. And someone who's looking at you from the outside as a monk or a nun, they may think you're a full renunciate. And that's the message that you are conveying in an external way. But inwardly, you are with everyone, and you are feeling everything that everyone is feeling, and you are on the Bodhisattva path, and you are uncovering your mental habits one by one in this fashion. Okay, so we should realize then in this precious human birth that we shouldn't just regard our body as or regard our life as just a process of sustaining our body.
Especially now.
And the end, keep in mind that the end of our life, this body will always decay. So we must find the meaning of this body. We must find we must find the precious human body. And that precious human body implies a mind that is not attached to that body, but uses this body. Okay? Whatever you may do to guard and keep it, what will you do when the ruthless Lord of Death will seize and throw it to the dogs and birds? Okay, so now he's talking about, and we should reflect again in this way, in this sequential practice, about how our life is now ending. As soon as we're born, one point of view is as soon as we're born, we begin the death process. And we're using our intelligence and our attachment to guard our body. And our habit of guarding and protecting and indulging. Oh, not intelligence, indulging. I have my notes was in there. If we guard and keep our body by indulging in it, and this is like, too much, obsessing and always being worried about the looks of our body and so forth. Or if our health, has a very, we kind of a very narrow corridor of what we accept our body as feeling, is a kind of a attachment to having body always on a kind of a straight course from morning to night, day after day. We should always feel completely in tune. This is being attached to our body and paying too much attention to it. In the end, like it says, ruthless Lord of Death. Of course, the Lord of Death, the Yama, means time. The Lord of Death is time. The time of our death. And at the time when our time to die comes, it's ruthless, meaning that at the time of our death, there's no love, there's no forgiveness, there's no giving you a second chance. There's death. It's just and so whatever method or to whatever we assign our body to at when our mind and body separate, then what will you do if you're always worried about how your body is or feels or looks? So think about this, like in the ultimate sense. Here you're going through these different contemplations here, but then also the contemplation, which I'm sure you're familiar with, in the contemplations of impermanence, and how all birth ends in death. There's no sort of plan B. There's only one end of birth, and that's death. And when you die, three things happen. First, you can't take any of your possessions with you. Second, you can't take any of your friends with you. And third, you can't take your body with you. And the suffering at death comes based on one of the primary sufferings at death is attachment to possessions. So we learn to give our possessions away, to make sure that you have the paperwork of what happens so that you don't feel the affliction of attachment to your possessions at death. And your body. So here we're getting further teachings on how to uproot this attachment to our body and direct it towards the meaning of the body, what might be thought of as the essence of this life. When we die, think about how we die. Death is not other than when we stop breathing and our heart stops. Usually we breathe in and then we breathe out. And then we breathe in, then we breathe out. And when we don't breathe in again, then that's a point of death. Then the heart will stop. Okay, that. So this body, we have to leave it behind. Then number 68. If servants who cannot be set to work are not rewarded with supplies and clothing, why do you sustain with such great pains this body, which, though nourished, will abandon you? So here, the premise for this verse is how our mind seems to be unaware that our body will leave us in the end. And we care for it and take care of it as if it won't. But yet, if we, of course, if we hire someone to do a job for us, and they don't do it, then we won't pay them. And so here we're paying our body, but it's not going to stay with us. It will abandon us, just like someone who wants to get paid for a job, and then you pay them, and then they just walk away. That's what our body will do. So we should wonder, why are we so obsessive about caring for our body? It's not going to go with us when our mind goes on our journey to the next life. It will be left behind. So again, these contemplations are punctuating how our attachment needs to be antidoted with clear-headed logic and wisdom, basically knowledge. As it says in the commentary, our mind just seems completely unaware that our body will leave us the way that it's treating it. Our mind will continue, but our body will not. So here in this last verse of this practice, he says that so So pay this body due remuneration, and then be sure to make it work for you, but do not lavish everything on what will not bring perfect benefit.
Make it work.
It's not that. There's one more verse after this one, but here, what he's saying here points to how we should avoid being, the Buddhist path, as Buddha Shakyamuni taught in the very first teaching he gave, was to avoid extremes. Like in Buddha's lifetime, his first part of his life was one of complete indulgence and pursuing and fulfilling of sensory pleasures that originate and are experienced in the body. And then he broke from that, as we know, and then he went on this whole other extreme path of hardships and penance and so forth. And his message was when he attained enlightenment, is to follow the middle way and not to fall into extremes of sense gratifications or extreme deprivation, sense deprivation, but to follow the middle path. Just eat food and clothe yourself in ways that will support your body as it practices virtue. Don't beat it up or cause it to struggle beyond its capacity. Although I do, a Nyungne now and then is a good thing. And people who have done a lot of Nyungnes, I know at our Trungpa Gompa in Tibet and so forth, there are practitioners there who turned Nyungne into their a lifelong practice, but their body became gradually adjusted to a complete liquid and solid food fast every other day, and it just became an easy lifestyle, which many people find after stringing a number of Nyungnes together. So pay the time and be sure to make it work for you. So, but don't lavish everything on what will not bring perfect benefit. That is to say, our purpose is to establish all sentient beings in a state of liberation from suffering and enlightenment. And so maintain your body for that purpose. And considering that it may take a bit of time to do that, then we should also, like on what will not bring perfect benefit, also refers to our mind's future lives. And again, we have to not fall into the extremes of being judgmental about what are called in Buddhist language kind of ordinary people who have not taken refuge, who are not kind of passionate about attaining enlightenment, who are not necessarily driven by a motivation that includes the scope of all sentient beings, as does the Bodhisattva mind, the mind of the Bodhisattva. So especially as beginning bodhisattvas, we both have to avoid being overly influenced by ordinary people, and also we need to avoid being influenced in judging ordinary people, but always being kind and considerate and respectful to others, and also being humble. I think this kind of contemplation and the difficulty of this contemplation might it might be intellectually it works, but for people like us, modern people, we're also kind of very we have more heightened emotional life. One of the qualities, not qualities, one of the characteristics of the degenerate age, that this gets worse, that gets worse, the environment gets worse, the water gets worse, but also the kleshas actually get more. The kleshas get more better. Our attachment is better than more. So that's our time period is like that. So it's much more scary and maybe challenging to talk to ourselves like this for fear of what the outcomes will be. But certainly things aren't working out that well, and our Dharma practice is pretty challenged most of the time, and our aspirations. But what this kind of contemplation does is that it brings our aspirations and our capacity closer together, because this attachment to the body is so pivotal in our is such an obstacle to our practice. Think about it. Really think about it. So here, 70, then regard your body as a vessel. It's a support for the Dharma. Maintain this body to the extent that serves this function. Think of your body as having a function. It has an actual meaning. The meaning of the body is not in the body, but the meaning of the body is in the mind that should be running the body, not the other way around. Bodies shouldn't be running the mind. That's one thing we learn in doing Yungnes, is how you had no idea that our body was influencing such control over our mind. So we're trying to turn it the other way around, to bring our mind into its correct stance, its correct point of view. Regard your body as a vessel, a simple boat for going here and there. Make of it a thing that answers every wish to bring about the benefit of beings. Make of it a body, make this body into a Buddha body, an enlightened body, so that whoever sees that body, whoever hears, thinks of, or touches, or remembers that body, just like when you see the image of a Buddha, that it brings about the benefit of beings. I say that attaining enlightenment, then then there's enlightened body, speech, and mind. There's Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. There's form kayas and the formless kayas, the Dharmakaya and the Rupakayas. So there is a manifestation that occurs at enlightenment. And so we want to take this flesh and blood body we have now, find its meaning, practice the Bodhisattva path to transform this flesh and blood body into the form kaya. It will become what's called a wish-fulfilling jewel. Whoever sees, hears, touches, remembers, and so forth. So we should focus, train our minds to focus on the two kinds of bodhicitta, to have this mind that has this noble intention, one that focuses on the fruit of enlightenment. The fruition is enlightenment. That is aspiration, bodhicitta. It means you're focusing on the fruit. And bodhicitta that focuses on the cause or the seed of the seed of enlightenment is engaging bodhicitta. So at first we train in aspiration bodhicitta, and then we try to practice as much as we can, focusing on the roots or the cause of enlightenment, which are the paramitas, the 6 perfections. And if we continue to cultivate this intention, this one-pointed intention, this focus of attention on attaining enlightenment, both from our own point of view and also from the point of view of others. You know, we say, may all beings attain enlightenment. We say that at the end of or maybe we have that as on our emails, our signature file. May all beings attain enlightenment. That's focusing on the fruit, even the 4 immeasurables. When we contemplate, may all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness, which is virtue. May all beings be free of suffering, and may they be free of the causes of suffering, which is negative actions. And these kinds of aspiration contemplations, equanimity, joy, and so forth, those are all the practice of bodhicitta that focuses on the fruit, the fruition, enlightenment, temporarily as happiness and ultimately as enlightenment. Then when we focus on the bodhicitta of the engaging bodhicitta, we focus on the cause, then we're focusing on the paramitas. And the underlying motivation of engaging bodhicitta with the paramitas is this aspiration bodhicitta. So in the mind training, then we train in aspiration bodhicitta, and then we discover how to get used to that. We get used to that aspiration bodhicitta so that we can engage in the paramitas without blocking it out or without forgetting about it. That's why we always make aspiration bodhicitta our practice first. Then when we practice generosity, it will be motivated by this aspiration. Then we're talking about the merging of the coming together of the 2 bodhicittas. Okay, so that's how we should conduct ourselves, and that's what will replace our present attachment to our body. As long as we're attached to our body and we don't address that that attachment, thinking that we're not really attached to our body, then this bodhicitta will become difficult. And so here, Shantideva in this chapter, which is in the section of the overall section of how to not lose bodhicitta once it's arisen. So think of the context and then kind of go through the mechanics of these kinds of thinking. Okay? Uh-oh. So I think we'll end at this point. Where I am, I'm in Seattle, and I think that my computer is going to go off any second. So I will say goodbye. I also have some family business to deal with here, with some congratulations and things like that for my new granddaughter. And so I'll dedicate my merit tonight on offline. I'll do my merit offline, and if Mark could lead the recitation of the dedication, then I'm going to take off now. Okay, so be well, be safe, be happy.
Thank you, Lama Pema.
See you.
Thank you,
soon.
Lama
Lama.
Pema. And congratulations.
Thank you,
Thank
Lama
you.
Pema.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to your son and daughter-in-law.
Okay. Do the dedication.
All the virtue.
Of this
The virtue of
practice.
sorry, stay on mute, please.
Oops.
All the virtue of this practice and all that is gathered throughout the 3 times, I dedicate to all beings without exception, so that they may attain Buddhahood. Following and emulating the omniscient and courageous Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra, I completely dedicate all virtue. Since dedicating merit is praised as supreme by victorious ones of the 3 times, I completely dedicate all these roots of virtue for the sake of practicing excellent conduct. May the teachings of the Lord Buddha, the only source of benefit and happiness, long remain in this world. May the lives of those who uphold these teachings be as stable as a victory banner. Supreme Bodhicitta is so very precious. Where it has not yet arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but evermore grow and flourish.
Thank you, Mark.
Certainly.
Thank you. And good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.